The rain hammered down on the cobbled streets of Manchester's northern quarter, turning the evening into a slick, unforgiving blur. Emily Hargreaves clutched her umbrella like a lifeline, her heels clicking frantically against the wet pavement as she darted between the throngs of Friday night revelers spilling out of pubs and bars. At 28, she was no stranger to the city's relentless pace. Born and raised in a terraced house in Chorlton, she'd clawed her way through university and into a junior marketing role at Apex Media, one of the UK's fastest-growing digital agencies. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, she was running late, soaked to the bone, and on the verge of a breakdown. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her coat pocket, messages from her mum, no doubt, laced with that familiar mix of concern and passive aggression. "Emily, love, where are you? Your dad's already on his second pint, and Aunt Linda's asking questions." The family gathering at the Marble Arch pub wasn't just any Friday night out, it was a thinly veiled intervention. Her parents had been badgering her for months about settling down, especially after her last relationship imploded spectacularly 6 months ago. Mark, her ex, had been a charming accountant from Salford, until she caught him messaging his work colleague at 2 a.m. Now, at every family do, the questions came, "When are you bringing someone home, Em? You're not getting any younger." She'd promised them she'd bring a +1 this time. A lie, born of exhaustion and a desperate need to shut them up. But as the pub's warm glow came into view, neon signs flickering through the downpour, panic set in. No date. No boyfriend. Just her, alone, about to face the firing squad of relatives armed with unsolicited advice and pitying glances. Emily paused under the awning of a nearby cafe, heart pounding. She scanned the street desperately. Couples huddled under umbrellas, laughing as they dashed inside for pints and pies. A group of lads in United shirts stumbled out of a bar, singing off-key. And then she saw him, a tall man in a tailored navy coat, leaning against the wall outside the pub, checking his watch with an air of quiet impatience. He looked mid-30s, sharp-jawed with dark hair tousled by the wind, a faint stubble shadowing his face. Professional, put together. The kind of man her dad would approve of on sight. Without thinking, Emily strode over, her umbrella tilting precariously. "Excuse me," she blurted, her Mancunian accent thick with nerves. "This is going to sound mad, but, please, pretend to be my husband." The man looked up, his gray eyes narrowing in surprise. He was even more striking up close, broad shoulders, a subtle cologne cutting through the rain-scented air. "Pardon," he said, his voice smooth with a hint of a London edge, polished but not posh. Emily's cheeks burned. "Just for tonight. My family's in there, the Marble Arch. They're expecting me with someone, and I lied. Said I was married. If I walk in alone, it'll be World War III. Please. I'll buy you a pint, explain everything. 5 minutes, that's all." He stared at her for a long moment, rain dripping from his lashes. Then, to her astonishment, a slow smile tugged at his lips. "Husband, that's a new one. All right, love. Lead the way. But you owe me more than a pint." Relief flooded her. "Thank you. I'm Emily, by the way. Emily Hargreaves." "Alexander," he replied, offering his arm with mock gallantry. "Alexander Thorne. Your devoted husband, at your service." They pushed through the pub doors into a wall of warmth and noise. The Marble Arch was a Manchester institution, exposed brick walls, craft beers on tap, the hum of conversation mingling with the clink of glasses. Fairy lights twinkled over the bar, and the scent of fish and chips wafted from the kitchen. Emily's family occupied a corner booth. Her mum, dad, Aunt Linda, and a smattering of cousins, all nursing pints and plates of pie. There you are," her mum called, waving frantically. Her dad's eyes lit up at the sight of Alexander, already sizing him up like a potential son-in-law. "Sorry we're late," Emily said breathlessly, slipping her hand into Alexander's. His palm was warm, firm, surprisingly reassuring. "Traffic was murder. Everyone, this is my husband, Alex." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the group. Her mum stood, enveloping them in hugs. "Husband. Emily Hargreaves, you've been holding out on us." Alexander played along flawlessly, shaking hands with her dad. "Call me Alex, sir," and charming Aunt Linda with a compliment on her scarf. "Emily's told me all about your famous Sunday roasts," he said, his tone easy, convincing. Emily shot him a grateful glance, her pulse racing from the lie and the proximity. As they settled into the booth, pints arriving courtesy of her dad, Emily leaned close to Alexander under the pretense of passing the menu. "You're a natural," she whispered. "How can I ever thank you?" He turned his head, their faces inches apart, his breath warm against her ear. "Start with that pint. And maybe tell me why a beautiful woman like you needs a fake husband." Her heart skipped. "Beautiful?" Before she could respond, her mum launched into questions. "How did you meet? When's the wedding anniversary?" And Alexander wove a tale of a chance encounter at a work conference in London, a whirlwind romance. Emily nodded along, her hand still in his under the table. The evening blurred into laughter and stories. Alexander fit in seamlessly, debating football with her dad. He was a City fan, earning brownie points, sharing travel anecdotes that had her cousins wide-eyed. Emily found herself relaxing, the tension easing as she stole glances at him. He was witty, attentive. When he brushed a strand of wet hair from her face, pretending to be affectionate, a spark ignited in her chest. As the night wound down, her family toasting the happy couple, Emily excused herself to the loo. In the mirror, she saw her flushed cheeks, the sparkle in her eyes. What was happening? This stranger had saved her evening, but the way he looked at her, it felt real. Back at the booth, the group was saying goodbyes. Her mum pulled her aside. "He's lovely, Em. Don't let this one go." Outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle. Emily turned to Alexander, suddenly shy. "I can't thank you enough. That was incredible." He smiled, stepping closer, the street lamp casting shadows on his face. "It was fun. More than I expected." His hand lifted, thumb grazing her cheek. "You know, for a fake wife, you're pretty convincing." Before she could think, he leaned in, his lips brushing hers in a soft, tentative kiss. It was brief, but electric warmth spreading through her like the first sip of mulled wine on a winter night. She kissed back, her hands finding his coat lapels, the world fading to just them and the quiet patter of rain. Pulling away, breathless, she whispered, "What was that for?" "Method acting," he teased, but his eyes were serious. "Walk you home." As they linked arms and strolled into the night, Emily's mind raced. Who was this man, really? And why did pretending feel so dangerously close to the truth? The door creaked open just enough for a sliver of hallway light to cut across the rumpled sheets. She stood there in the half-shadow, one hand still on the knob, the other pressed flat against her stomach as if holding something in. Her eyes, wide, glassy, the color of storm-lit sea, found mine across the room. "You came back," I said. My voice sounded foreign, like it belonged to someone who hadn't spent the last 3 hours staring at the ceiling, replaying every word we'd screamed at each other. She stepped inside, letting the door click shut behind her. The sound was soft, final. "I never really left," she whispered. "Not all of me." The air between us was thick with the scent of rain on her coat, the faint trace of the cigarette she'd smoked on the fire escape. I sat up slowly, the mattress groaning under my weight. "You said you were done." "I was." She took one step, then another, until her knees brushed the edge of the bed. "But done isn't the same as gone." Her fingers found the hem of my shirt, tugging it up just enough to expose the scar along my ribs, the one she'd traced with her tongue the first night we met. Now her touch was colder, hesitant. "I keep thinking about the way you looked at me," she said. "Like I was the answer to a question you hadn't asked yet." I caught her wrist. Her pulse hammered against my thumb. "And now I'm asking." She leaned in, her breath warm against my jaw. "What happens if we stop pretending we don't need this?" The question hung there, raw and trembling. Outside, thunder rolled low over the city, shaking the windows. Inside, her lips brushed the corner of my mouth. Not a kiss, not yet. A promise. A threat. I pulled her down onto the bed, the sheets twisting around us like restraints we'd both agreed to. Her coat slipped from her shoulders, pooling on the floor. Underneath, she wore the same black dress from earlier, the one that clung to her hips like it was trying to hold her together. "Tell me to leave," she said against my throat. "Say it, and I will." I didn't. Instead, I kissed her like drowning men kiss air, desperate, greedy, terrified of the moment it ends. Her hands were everywhere, nails raking down my back, anchoring me to the pane so I wouldn't float away. We moved together with the kind of violence that only comes from loving someone too much to let them go cleanly. Later, when the rain had softened to a drizzle and our breathing had slowed to something almost human, she traced the line of my collarbone with a fingertip. "This doesn't fix anything," she murmured. "I know. But it's a start." I turned to look at her. The storm had passed, leaving the room dim and quiet. Her eyes were closed, lashes dark against her cheeks. For the first time in weeks, she looked peaceful. The morning after tasted like rust and regret. Sunlight knifed through the blinds, carving white scars across the floorboards and across her bare shoulder where my mouth had been hours earlier. She lay on her stomach, one arm dangling off the bed, fingers brushing the coat she'd never bothered to pick up. The black dress was twisted around her waist like a tourniquet. I watched the slow rise and fall of her back and felt the old fracture reopen inside my chest, the one that had never quite healed from the first time she left. She stirred. A small sound, half sigh, half sob, escaped her throat. When her eyes opened they were bloodshot, the storm sea color dulled to something bruised. "Coffee?" I asked. My voice cracked on the second syllable. She pushed herself up on her elbows. The sheet slipped, revealing the constellation of marks I'd left along her spine. "You always ask the wrong questions," she said. "Coffee won't keep the walls from closing in." I swung my legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cold. "Then what will?" She was quiet so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, breaking the lease. Burning the photographs. Starting the fight we keep circling. I laughed, a dry, ugly sound. "We tried that. Remember? You threw the ring into the harbor." I punched the mirror. Blood on the tiles looked like modern art. "That was foreplay," she said. "This is the main event." She stood, naked and unashamed, and crossed to the window. The city sprawled below us, indifferent. She pressed her forehead to the glass. "I booked a train. Leaves at noon. One way." The words hit harder than any slap. "Where?" "Doesn't matter." She turned. "Come with me or don't. But decide before the whistle. I'm tired of half-lives." I stared at the scar on my ribs, the one she'd kissed like scripture. "And if I say no?" Her smile was small, sharp, already mourning. "Then this was the last time I let you ruin me." Silence pooled between us, thick enough to choke on. I thought of the apartment we'd painted together, the stupid inside jokes scrawled on the fridge in dry erase marker, the way she hummed off key in the shower. I thought of the nights I'd lain awake listening for her key in the lock that never came. I stood. The floorboards groaned like they were trying to talk me out of it. "Ticket for two," I said. She didn't move for a heartbeat. Then she crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed me, not soft, not sweet, but like someone sealing a pact with teeth. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright again, storm-lit and dangerous. "Pack light," she whispered. "We're only taking what we can't live without." I looked at the bed, the coat, the photographs curling at the edges on the dresser. "That's nothing," I said. "Exactly." We left the key on the counter and the door unlocked. The hallway smelled of burnt toast and someone else's argument. In the elevator she laced her fingers through mine, knuckles white. Neither of us spoke. On the platform, steam hissed around our ankles like ghosts trying to follow. The train idled, impatient. She stepped up first, then turned, offering her hand. I took it. The doors closed. The city shrank. Somewhere behind us, the apartment sat empty, sheets still warm, coffee still cold. The train lurched out of the station like it had somewhere better to be. We sat side by side in cracked vinyl seats, knees touching, hands still locked. The city dissolved into graffiti-scarred brick, then warehouses, then nothing but telephone poles whipping past like metronomes counting down to whatever came next. She stared straight ahead. "No names on the tickets," she said. "Just numbers. Like we're cargo." "Feels right," I answered. My voice sounded borrowed. A conductor passed, punched our stubs without looking up. The hole he left in the paper looked like a bullet wound. Hours bled together. Fields of corn stubble, rusted silos, billboards promising salvation in 12-point font. She leaned her head against the window, breath fogging the glass in slow, deliberate circles. I watched the reflection of her eyes in the pane, two small storms trapped between us and the world rushing by. "You ever think we're just running in circles?" she asked suddenly. "Every damn day. But these circles have momentum now." She turned to me. "No brakes." I nodded. The scar on my ribs itched under my shirt, phantom heat. "What happens when we stop?" "We don't." She said it like a prayer, like a threat. Night fell hard somewhere past the state line. The car lights dimmed to a sickly amber. Most passengers slept, mouths open, dreams leaking out in small wet sounds. She pulled a flask from her coat pocket, hers, not the one we'd left on the floor, and took a swallow. Whiskey, cheap and honest. She offered it. I drank. It burned clean. "Tell me something true," she said, voice low enough that the snoring man across the aisle didn't stir. I thought of the photographs curling on the dresser, the coffee ring on the lease agreement, the way she used to steal my socks because hers always had holes. "I still set 2 places at the table," I said. "Even when you were gone." Her fingers tightened around mine. "I kept your voicemail. The one where you said you were sorry but didn't know why. Played it on loop until the battery died." We didn't cry. We'd spent that currency already. Somewhere around 3 a.m. the train shuddered to an unscheduled stop. Lights flickered. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Track work ahead, 30-minute delay." The car filled with groans and the rustle of coats. She stood. "Come on." We slipped out between cars, boots crunching on gravel. The air was sharp with diesel and frost. Stars punched holes in the sky, indifferent witnesses. She led me along the length of the train until we stood in the narrow space between 2 boxcars, wind whipping her hair across my face. "Here," she said, pressing something small and cold into my palm. The ring. The one she'd thrown into the harbor. Tarnished now, but whole. "I dove for it," she said. 3 weeks later. Froze my ass off. Thought maybe if I found it, the water would give you back. I closed my fist around it. The metal bit. "Why now?" "Because we're not fixed. We're just moving. And moving things need weight." She took the ring, slid it onto her thumb where it spun loose. Reminder. Not promise. I kissed her then, tasting whiskey and winter and the faint copper of old blood. The train whistle screamed behind us, impatient. We climbed back on just as the wheels began to turn. Dawn found us in a diner off the last stop before nowhere. Greasy spoons, cracked mugs, a waitress who called everyone Han like it was armor. We sat in a booth scarred with initials and heartbreak. She ordered pancakes, I got eggs. We didn't speak until the plates were empty. "Next town's got a pawn shop," she said, wiping syrup from her lip with the back of her hand. "We sell the ring. Buy bus tickets further west. Or south. Or we walk until our feet bleed. Your call." I looked out the window. The highway stretched both ways, swallowed by heat shimmer and distance. A semi roared past, Doppler shifting into silence. "Walk," I said. She smiled, small, real, terrifying. "Thought you'd say that." We left a 20 under the salt shaker and stepped into the glare. The ring glinted once on her thumb before she slipped it into her pocket. Gravel crunched under our boots. The diner shrank in the rear view of the world. Behind us, the train pulled away without us, carrying ghosts and half-lives to destinations we'd never claim. Ahead, heat, horizon, the sound of our own heartbeats keeping crooked time. The first mile was easy. The second mile tasted like dust and gasoline. By the third, our shadows had learned to walk without us. We followed the white line where asphalt met shoulder, a thin scar stitched across the country's hide. Heat rose in waves, warping the air until the horizon looked like a mirage we might never reach. She walked half a step ahead, coat tied around her waist, shirt plastered to her spine. I watched the ring-shaped bruise on her thumb where the metal had pressed all night. No cars passed. Just dragonflies and the occasional hawk circling like it had bets on how long we'd last. At dusk we found a culvert under the highway, concrete cool and echoing. She crawled in first, knees scraping, and I followed. The space smelled of creek mud and old rain. We lay on our backs, staring up at the underside of the road, rusted rebar, graffiti hearts, someone's phone number promising a good time in 2017. "Think they're looking?" I asked. "Who?" "Anyone." She laughed, the sound bouncing off the curved walls. "We're a missing persons report that hasn't been filed yet." Night seeped in. Crickets tuned their strings. Somewhere above, a truck downshifted, Doppler thunder that shook loose grit onto our faces. She turned toward me, cheek against the concrete. "Tell me the worst thing you ever did," she said. I thought of the mirror, the blood, the way I'd screamed her name into an empty apartment until the neighbors banged on the walls. "I kept the pieces of the mirror," I said. "Glued them into a frame. Hung it over the bed so I'd never forget what I looked like when I lost you." She was quiet. "Then, I pawned your grandmother's watch. The one you said never to touch. Bought a bottle and a bus ticket to the coast. Drank until I couldn't remember the inscription on the back. We let that sit between us, heavier than the ring, sharper than the scar. Eventually she reached into her pocket and pulled out the ring. Moonlight through the culvert mouth caught the tarnish, turned it silver again. She rolled it across the concrete like a coin. Heads we keep walking. Tails we hitch the first ride that stops. It spun, wobbled, landed tails up. Best 2 out of 3. I asked. She flicked it into the dark. We listened to it ping once, twice, then silence. "Guess the road decides," she said. We slept tangled, knees to chest, her hair in my mouth. Dreams came in fragments. The apartment door swinging open to an empty room, the train whistle morphing into a scream, the ring sinking through black water while hands reached up from below. Morning tasted metallic. We crawled out blinking into glare. The highway shimmered. In the distance, heat lightning stitched the sky without sound. She stood, brushed grit from her jeans. "Feet okay?" I looked down. Blisters blooming like poppies. "They'll hold." We walked. Noon found us at a crossroads gas station, one pump, one payphone with a cord cut. Inside, the clerk slept upright behind bulletproof glass, TV flickering static. We bought water and a stale honey bun with the last of our cash. She tore the bun in half, the sweet stuck to our teeth like regret. Outside, a pickup idled, driver's door open, radio preaching fire and brimstone. Keys in the ignition. No one around. She looked at me. I looked at her. "Grand Theft Auto," I said. "That's a new low. Or a shortcut." She was already moving. We slid in, vinyl seats hot enough to brand. The engine coughed, caught. She floored it before I had the door shut. Dust plumed behind us like a confession. Miles unspooled. She drove with one hand on the wheel, the other on my thigh, nails digging in every time the speedometer climbed. The radio spat gospel, then country, then static. We left it on, white noise baptism. At a rest stop outside a town whose name we didn't catch, she killed the engine and stared at the steering wheel. "I can't feel my hands," she said. I took them. They trembled. We could dump the truck. Walk again. Disappear for real. She shook her head. "Disappearing's easy. Staying gone, that's the trick." A semi roared past, rocking the cab. In the side mirror I saw the gas station shrinking, then gone. She restarted the engine. "One more tank. Then we decide." We drove until the gauge kissed empty and the sun bled out across the plains. Found a dirt turnout, killed the lights. Stars came on like someone flipping a switch. She climbed into the truck bed, lay back against the warm metal. I followed. The ring was in her palm again, conjured from nowhere. She held it up to the sky, a tiny eclipse. "Remember when you said you'd marry me on a Tuesday in March because the light was better?" she asked. "I remember you laughed for 10 minutes straight." I was going to say yes. The words hung there, fragile as frost. I took the ring. Slid it onto her finger this time, properly, the way I should have the first time. It fit. She stared at it like it might bite. "Still no promises," she whispered. "None needed." We kissed slow, careful, like handling something already cracked. The truck bed smelled of oil and summer night. Somewhere a coyote yipped, answered by another. We didn't flinch. Later, she traced the scar on my ribs through my shirt. When we stop, really stop, I want a house with a porch that creaks. And a dog that hates everyone but us. And a mirror we never hang. She smiled against my neck. Deal. Dawn found the truck abandoned at the edge of a dry lake bed, keys under the mat, radio still preaching to no one. We walked north, boots kicking up alkali ghosts. The ring caught the first light, threw it back like a dare. Behind us, footprints filled with wind. Ahead, the horizon kept its secrets. The lake bed cracked under our soles like old bone. Each step sounded a small fracture, a quiet breaking we no longer tried to mend. Salt crusted the edges of our boots. The air tasted of metal and sun-bleached regret. We walked until the truck was a rust speck, then nothing, then memory. She stopped first. Bent, picked up a shard of sun-bleached glass, turned it in her fingers. The ring glinted beside it, twin relics, one accidental, one deliberate. Water used to be here, she said. Deep enough to drown a town. I looked at the white flatness. Looks like it succeeded. She laughed, a cracked sound that scattered a lone crow. Everything drowns eventually. Question is what floats. We kept north. The land rose in slow, grudging increments, scrub giving way to pine, heat thinning to something almost breathable. By late afternoon we crested a ridge and saw it, a cabin half swallowed by manzanita, tin roof patched with blue tarp, chimney exhaling a thin ribbon of smoke though no one had lived here in years. The door hung open on one hinge. Inside, dust thick as felt, a table with 3 legs, a mattress that smelled of mice and better days. On the windowsill, a single coffee mug, ceramic, chipped, the words "world's okayest mum" faded to ghosts. She set the glass shard beside the mug. Home, she said, testing the word. I dropped our empty water bottle on the table. It rolled, stopped against a rusted nail. Needs work. We're good at that. We worked. I scavenged boards from a collapsed shed. She pried the blue tarp loose and wrestled it over the roof's worst holes. Rain came that night, sudden, biblical, hammering the tin like accusations. We lay on the mattress, listening to leaks drum into a pot we'd found, her head on my chest, ring cool against my skin. Tomorrow, she murmured, we steal a dog. Tomorrow, I said, we earn one. Dawn was pale and forgiving. We followed a deer trail down to a creek that still ran, clear, cold, tasting of stone. She knelt, cupped water to her mouth, then splashed her face. Droplets clung to her lashes like tiny decisions. On the far bank, paw prints. Large. Fresh. She grinned. Coyote. Dog, I said. 2 splayed. And look, collar drag. We tracked the prints upstream, past alder and thistle, until the creek widened into a pool. There, half hidden in reeds, sat a mutt the color of storm clouds. Ribs showing, one ear torn, eyes the same bruised sea as hers. A frayed rope collar, no tags. It watched us without hope. She crouched, extended a hand. Hey, asshole. You lost. The dog sniffed, then walked forward, slow, deliberate, and placed its head against her knee. She scratched behind the good ear. Its tail thumped once, like it hurt. I tore a strip from my shirt, fashioned a leash. Guess we're 3 now. Back at the cabin we fed it the last of the honey bun, soaked in creek water. It ate like it expected the bowl to vanish. She named it Tuesday, because the light was better. Days blurred. We patched the roof, scavenged a stove that almost worked, hung the blue tarp as a curtain. I built a 4th leg for the table from a fence post. She found wild onions, a rusted kettle, a deck of cards missing the Queen of Hearts. Nights, we played gin by candle stub, the dog snoring between us, rain soft on the tin. One evening she came back from the creek with a fish, trout, silver, still twitching. She held it up like a trophy. Dinner and a show. I cleaned it with a pocket knife while she built the fire. Sparks rose, died against the dark. We ate with our fingers, grease shining on our chins. The dog got the head, it crunched cartilage like applause. Later, full and half-drunk on creek water and silence, she took the ring off, laid it on the table between us. The candle guttered, throwing our shadows tall. Still no promises, she said. Still none needed. She picked up the glass shard, held it to the flame. Light fractured, painted the walls in pale rainbows. "We could melt this," she said. "Make something new." "Or leave it sharp," I said. "Reminder." She set it down, slid the ring back on. Both. Outside, wind moved through the pines like gossip. The dog whined in its sleep, paws twitching after rabbits that no longer ran. I banked the fire, banked the night.